Hey guys, tonight we're going to slip beneath velvet drapes, past creaky timber floors, and into the hush of an Elizabethan bedchamber. You're standing inside a noble's sleeping quarters, the heavy scent of lavender wafting from cloth bundles, tied with silk string, nestled like secret offerings beneath plump pillows. Candles flicker in wrought iron sconces, casting golden halos on embroidered tapestries. The fire in the hearth is crackling its final lullaby, and the air is thick with perfume and the subtle damp of old wood. There's a sleep mask waiting. 4. Used hitch from fine linen, stuffed with herbs, and worn not just for rest, but to keep the bad humors away. Of course, you probably won't survive this era. The lice alone are enough to make you reconsider time travel. The air might smell like lavender, but your odds of getting a decent night's sleep in 1588 are historically low. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Let me know in the comments where you're listening from and what time it is in your part of the world. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You reach out to touch the sleep mask. The linen is softer than you'd expect from a world without fabric softener, and faintly cool from the open window nearby. You bring it to your face, and it smells like crushed herbs, with lavender being the most pronounced, but not the sweet, artificial lavender of modern lotions. This is sharp, earthy, medicinal-like. It's meant to protect you, not pamper you. In the Elizabethan era, people took sleep seriously, even though their beds were stuffed with straw, bugs, and occasionally their own servants. A noble's bed wasn't just a bed, it was a statement, often 7 feet high, crowned with carved wood, layered with embroidered quilts, and surrounded by heavy curtains to trap heat and hide your awkward nightcap. Lavender wasn't just for the nose. It was believed to ward off disease, bad dreams, and even melancholy. The theory of the 4 humors: blood, phlegm, black bile, and yellow bile dominated medicine at the time. Sleep, like everything else, had to be balanced. Lavender's warming, dry properties were thought to balance the colder humors, easing one into restful, non-demonic dreams. Historians still argue whether this belief actually made people feel safer, or just gave them something to blame when they woke up in a panic. Tonight, you're lucky you're not one of the poor souls sleeping beside oxen in a stable. You're a guest of a well-off merchant. His house is timber-framed, his windows glazed a luxury, and he even has sheets washed more than twice a season. A servant prepares your sleeping space, drawing the bed curtains closed, setting out your linen mask filled with dried herbs. Lavender is the star, but it might also include rosemary, mint, or even dried rose petals, if the household is especially indulgent. As you lie down, you hear the quiet shuffle of feet, servants extinguishing candles down the hall, a soft clink of pewter. Somewhere in another room, a child coughs. Once, then silence. Your host might explain, half-jokingly, that the mask will keep your humors in check. But deep down, he's probably also hoping it masks the scent of chamber pots, the unwashed body of his cousin sleeping in the next room, and the creeping mold behind the tapestries. Still, there's something soothing about the ritual. You tie the ribbon gently behind your head, letting the mask settle over your eyes. The fabric doesn't block all the light, nothing like modern blackout masks, but it filters it enough to ease the harsh candle glow into a golden blur. The lavender scent deepens as the warmth of your skin activates the oils. You feel, for a moment, like you're floating in a garden just before dusk. There are no digital distractions, here just the steady rhythm of your own breath, the creaking of old beams, and perhaps a mouse or two behind the wains. If you were truly living in this time, you might drift off wondering if tomorrow will bring plague news, or just another dinner of boiled turnips. But for now, you are safe, tucked in, breathing lavender. It's strange, isn't it, how much care was poured into sleep when people didn't know what germs were, when the stars above were still believed to influence your dreams, and nightmares were thought to be caused by eating cheese too late. People feared sleep because they didn't fully understand it. Yet, they still did their best to make it beautiful. Soft linens, embroidered pillows, the comforting weight of ritual. And you here, now are, wrapped in that same intention. Every stitch in your sleep mask was meant to soothe you. Every dried herb, every whispered prayer, every pulled curtain is working quietly to draw you down into slumber. Outside, an owl hoots once. A soft breeze pushes the shutter open a crack, the scent of nighttime wood smoke, loam, distant hay mingles with lavender. You adjust your position, feel the creak of the straw mattress beneath you, and settle in, letting go, letting the weight of the day lift like candle smoke in the rafters. The lavender lingers, an invisible thread between you and the stillness of the night. But in Elizabethan England, that scent did more than lull one to sleep. It meant something. Lavender wasn't just pleasant, it was status. You breathe in again. Beneath the floral top notes is something sharper, greener, almost medicinal. That was the point. To Elizabethans, a sweet-smelling room meant health, piety, and, frankly, that you weren't poor. A house filled with herbs was a house with money to spend on unnecessary things. Necessary, of course, in that deeply superstitious way only the 16th century could pull off. Lavender stood tall in the garden of sense. It was cultivated in monastery gardens, grown in kitchen plots, and imported from southern Europe if you could afford the good stuff. It was used in soaps, potpourris, and as we know, inside delicate sleep masks. Its reputation was bolstered by Galenic medicine, which categorized it as warm and dry, ideal qualities to balance a body full of cold, wet phlegm, especially in winter. You wouldn't say it aloud at the time, but people really believed a foul smell could make you ill. The miasma theory, that disease floated through the air in noxious vapors, meant pleasant scents were practically medicinal. A lavender sleep mask wasn't just luxury, it was health insurance. This is where things get a little more layered. That sweet scent on your pillow, it wasn't only there for you. It was there to show your visitors, should they see your sleeping quarters, which they often did, that you weren't crawling with invisible humors. Lavender was, quite literally, social currency. If you used it, people assumed you had your life together. If you didn't, well, you might as well hang a sign on your door that read, "Carrier of plague, approach with caution." Historians still argue whether the emphasis on scent was more medical or cultural. Was lavender a doctor's recommendation, or just a 16th century status symbol, like a scented Instagram filter? Probably a bit of both. You turn your head slightly on the pillow, and your sleep mask shifts. The scent deepens again. Imagine, for a moment, being one of the herbalists responsible for this fragrance. You might have spent hours drying bundles of lavender in the sun, crushing it gently with mortar and pestle, then stuffing tiny cloth sachets, stitched by candlelight. Those sachets would then be tucked into the corners of bedchambers, hung in windows, or your specialty sewn into masks, like the one you wear now. Not all lavender was created equal, either. The best came from well-tended gardens or sunny hillsides. The worst, well, let's just say you don't want to know how desperate apothecaries got during a bad harvest. Hint, dried moss and a bit of perfume oil can only fool so many noses. And then there were the social games. Imagine hosting a guest and offering them a perfumed mask for sleep. The scent says, you are worthy of comfort. But it also says, we know how to behave around people of taste. It was hospitality and humblebrag rolled into one soft ribbon-tied bundle. If you were visiting a wealthier household, say, a minor noble, you might find additional scents woven into the sleep aids: rosewater, bay leaves, even orris root, which smells faintly like violets and was wildly expensive. One noblewoman in 1592 was rumored to have an entire bed stuffed with dried lavender and rose petals. Lovely, yes, but also a haven for moths. Not everything about the past was practical. The poor, on the other hand, rarely got lavender. If they did, it was either gifted, stolen, or harvested wild from the countryside in small quantities. For them, a perfumed sleep mask wasn't a comfort, it was a curiosity. You'd be more likely to find elderflower or mint tucked into their homes, plants easier to forage, with equally hopeful folklore behind them. One odd historical tidbit that gets overlooked: some sleep masks weren't masks at all. They were long, narrow sachets, like cloth cigars, laid across the forehead or cheeks, or just tucked into a sleeve or under the pillow. The mask design, as we think of it today, became more fashionable in wealthier circles because it looked elegant, and because it didn't fall off when you tossed and turned on those very unforgiving mattresses back in your borrowed bed. You shift again. The weight of the sleep mask is light, but grounding. Maybe that's what made them so popular. Not just the smell, but the slight compression across the eyes, like the gentle pressure of being tucked in by someone who cares whether you sleep or not. And sleep mattered. In a world where life expectancy hovered around 40 years, sleep was sacred if elusive. Between worries about illness, crop failure, religious reformations, and whether your neighbor was spying on you for the Queen, a Restful night wasn't a given, so if a bit of lavender helped, you bet people used it. Outside your shuttered window, the street is quiet. Not silent Elizabethan cities were rarely that, but hushed. Somewhere, a night watchman murmurs the hour, a dog barks once, then quiet again. Inside, the lavender scent has mellowed, softening into a familiar friend. You're floating now, half in this room and half somewhere far from the weight of woolen sheets and drafty stone walls. Maybe in a field, maybe just a little closer to sleep. The sleep mask on your face is more than just a scented comfort tonight. It becomes a doorway. In Elizabethan times, crafting something as seemingly simple as a lavender-stuffed mask involved more steps, more hands, and more ritual than you'd expect. Before you fully drift away, let's walk through the process of how this strange little artifact of bedtime came to be. First, the fabric. Linen was the gold standard for sleep masks, not only for its softness, but because it was breathable, durable, and easily laundered. Cotton existed, of course, but it was rare and imported, still gaining popularity in English households. Silk was far too slippery and expensive for everyday items, unless you were royalty or had a tendency to casually flaunt your inheritance. So, your mask tonight, probably linen, woven from flax grown somewhere in the south of England, retted in a stream, then spun and bleached in open fields. Every thread has seen more sky than most people. A seamstress, possibly the lady of the house or one of her maids, would cut the fabric carefully by candlelight, measuring it with a strip of twine or by eye. No templates, no paper patterns, just generations of practice. She'd sew it using a backstitch, the strongest hand-sewn stitch they knew, making sure the seams wouldn't split and spill herbs all over the bedding. As for thread, likely linen, as well, waxed with beeswax for strength. Now, to the stuffing. The lavender had to be dried slowly, too fast, and it would lose its scent. Too moist, and mold would set in an unthinkable tragedy for something meant to sit so close to your face. Once dried, the blossoms were crumbled gently by hand or with a wooden mortar. Mixed in, depending on the household's taste and herb garden, could be other sleep-promoting botanicals, chamomile, hops, sweet woodruff, or vervain. Not all of them smelled nice, but they had a certain earthy charm. Some masks were lined with thin layers of wool or muslin to keep the herbs from tickling your nose. Others had to compartment one for herbs, the other for a tiny sachet of grains or sand to give it a bit of comforting weight. This was especially favored by those who claimed pressure on the eyes helped them fall asleep faster. Historians still argue whether this was an early form of sensory therapy or just a fluke of personal taste. Once filled, the mask was stitched shut with tight, nearly invisible seams. Then came the final touch, ribbons, long enough to tie behind the head, soft enough not to chafe, occasionally scented with rosewater or even a light brushing of vinegar to cleanse the aura. You can thank 16th century spiritual hygiene for that one. You, lying here now, wear such a mask. It's simple, just off-white linen, neatly stitched, the scent of lavender reaching your nose with every breath. But its journey to your face was anything but simple. It passed through gardens, drying rooms, spinning wheels, sewing needles, and soft, tired hands. And if you were a real noble, you might not even know how it got made. Someone else would handle it for you, probably your maidservant whose name you might forget, but who remembers that you once sneezed when she used rosemary in the stuffing. She's learned to add just a pinch of chamomile instead, because she cares, or because she's hoping for a raise. Possibly both. The interesting thing is how little of this is documented. While scholars pore over royal inventories and aristocratic letters, most records of everyday items like sleep masks are lost to time. You'll find lists of bed linens and herbs, descriptions of chambermaids' duties, mentions of lavender sachets tucked into sleeves or beds, but almost nothing about masks, which leaves us in that lovely twilight space between guesswork and imagination. And maybe that's part of the charm. The mask you wear now exists in the margin between fact and folklore, like a whispered recipe passed down without measurements, tweaked by taste and time. In the quiet of your chamber, a floorboard creaks. Perhaps it's a servant heading to bed, or the old house settling into the coolness of night. You pull your blankets higher, breathing deeper. You imagine the mask being made just for you, the seamstress humming, the herbalist choosing the freshest stalks, the thread drawn through linen with the patience of someone who knows sleep is sacred. Even the ribbon fraying slightly at the ends holds its own story. It may have once tied up someone's hair, been repurposed from a festival garland, or even scavenged from a discarded gown. Nothing was wasted in Elizabethan homes, not when everything had to be earned, bartered, or begged. You reach up and adjust the mask slightly. The scent of lavender strengthens, warm and dry. Your fingers brush over tiny, uneven stitches, proof that it was made by hand, with care, or at least with a kind of sleepy determination that says, this will do just fine. That's how things were. Nothing perfect, but perfectly enough. The room is darker now. You're breathing slower, the scent gentler. The weight of the mask is a hand pressing softly on your thoughts, keeping them from drifting too far. Sleep is near. You think of the seamstress, wherever she is. Perhaps she's asleep now too, in a smaller bed, with coarser sheets and fewer herbs, but she drifts off just the same, wrapped in her own dreams, stitching her way through the night. As your breath slows, you wonder how these Elizabethans dreamed under lavender's influence, and what they feared when night fell. Dreaming was no casual pastime. Here it was a strange, half-sacred adventure, tangled up with medicine, religion, and even the shape of the moon outside your window. You lie still, feeling the mask settle against your eyes. Its lavender perfume grows fainter now, as your nose grows used to it. But the Elizabethans would have sworn this scent did more than smell nice. It could protect you from nightmares. It could calm your humors. You believed the local herbalist, keep the devil away from your bedside altogether. Sleep was a dangerous thing, they thought. You left your body behind each night, after all, and traveled through invisible pathways no one quite understood. Maybe the Lord would guard you. Maybe he wouldn't. Dreams might come from angels or from demons, and if you dreamed too vividly, surely that was a warning about your sins, or a glimpse of your future, or a trick sent by witches to twist your mind. Historians still argue whether dreams were more feared or cherished in this time, but most agree they were never considered trivial. So you, in your lavender-scented calm, would have been doing serious spiritual work every night, navigating that in-between world. It was thought lavender helped cool the passions, preventing bad dreams that came from an overexcited spirit. That was especially important in a society terrified of demonic nightmares. You might lie down every night repeating a prayer to St. John the Baptist, hoping he'd watch over your slumber. Now, picture your room again, candles fading, shadows pooling in the corners. In those corners, Elizabethans worried, demons could lurk. A mask infused with lavender seemed a small but potent shield. The logic went like this: the same air that carried the plague also carried demons. So sweet, pure air was a natural defense, protecting the soul as well as the lungs. You shift under the covers, trying to imagine that constant fear that every dream might come with hidden meaning, every half-waking hallucination an omen. There was no TikTok to swipe away the scary thoughts. Just your faith, your mask, your herbal amulets, and your courage. Of course, sometimes the dreams were beautiful. Some Elizabethans wrote about meeting dead loved ones in dreams, or seeing gardens and music beyond the waking world. Lavender was supposed to encourage those gentler journeys, keeping nightmares at bay and letting the mind wander in peace. And when you woke, the first question was not, did you sleep well? But what did you see? Families might share dreams at breakfast. Neighbors might gossip about them at the market. A dream was a message, and ignoring it could be as dangerous as ignoring a warning from your physician. Lavender found its place in this landscape as the great comforter. A folk belief claimed it could quiet the heart, smooth the thoughts, and hush night terrors. Modern science has shown its compounds do have calming effects, but whether it chased off demons is still up for debate. If you were an anxious sleeper, your family might even place extra sachets of lavender beneath your sheets, just in case. And if that didn't help, there were stronger remedies: posies of rue and mugwort, prayers written on parchment and pinned above the bed, or iron nails hammered into the floorboards to anchor wandering spirits. But for tonight, you only need the lavender. You let it work. The scent seeps through you like warm tea, unfurling knots of worry you didn't even realize you were carrying. Your mind drifts toward dreams, gentler ones, maybe of green meadows, or of distant voices laughing in a sunny courtyard. Outside, you hear faint noises, a donkey braying far away, the hush of a tired city exhaling its worries. The night air tastes of wood smoke and damp hay. You breathe it in, the mask steady on your face, lavender holding your thoughts together. If you had been an Elizabethan noble, You might have worried about dream visions of shipwrecks, or about wars, or about your neighbor plotting a lawsuit against you. But you get to let those go. Just breathe in, breathe out. Your dreams will come, the safe ones, warmed by lavender. The mask has done its job. No demons tonight. No omens either. Only the hush of your own heartbeat, slowed by herbal calm, slipping you into a gentler world. Sleep was never guaranteed in this era. So many reasons to wake startled, to fear the unknown. But for these moments, in your lavender cocoon, you are untouchable. The house, though old and creaky, holds you like a lullaby. The scent of lavender is the last line of defense, the final note in a song meant to lull the Elizabethan mind toward dreams rather than dread. You turn to your side, shifting the linen gently across your cheeks. A tiny puff of new fragrance escapes, and it is just enough to guide you onward. You breathe in, hold, breathe out. No monsters, no bad humors, no dark visitors. Only a soft linen mask, stitched with patience and sprinkled with a humble hope that no nightmare would dare cross its purple-scented border. Sleep waits, and you are ready. The house is silent now, save for the slow rhythm of your breath and the faint crackle of a cooling hearth. You lie motionless under woolen blankets, the lavender in your mask whispering you toward slumber. But you're not alone in this household. Tonight, you get to peer into the dim candlelit world of an Elizabethan noble's bedtime routine, the strange and specific choreography that unfolded every evening, long before the era of blue light screens and melatonin gummies. Picture your host, a minor nobleman, late 40s, with a graying beard and slightly aching knees from riding to court. He's finished his supper: stewed rabbit, too much ale, and maybe a boiled turnip or two, and now he's making his way up the narrow wooden stairs to his chambers. His wife follows, a quiet presence in soft slippers, her hair already braided for bed. Their chamber is expansive by 16th century standards, though still chilly and drafty, even in August. The bed dominates the room, high off the ground, curtained on all sides, and dressed in embroidered linens washed just once this season. The fire has been tended by a servant earlier in the evening, and a warming pan filled with glowing embers has been swept between the sheets to chase away the damp dot. As the noble undresses, he's helped by a valet who unties the many strings, buttons, and clasps that make up his outer garments. His shirt, stiff with starch, is exchanged for a linen nitrela-long, loose tunic worn by both men and women. He may mutter something about the ache in his shoulders, or complain mildly that the pillows aren't fluffed the way he likes them. The valet listens, nods, and quietly folds the clothes for reuse tomorrow. Meanwhile, the lady of the house has settled at her dressing table, where a maid gently brushes her hair 100 strokes, if she's superstitious. A little lavender oil dabbed on her temples, perhaps a pinch of powdered iris root behind her ears, more for scent than skincare. Historians still argue whether women's nighttime rituals were more about genuine rest or appearances, but the truth probably lies somewhere in between. A prayer is spoken together, half mumbled, before the couple climbs into bed. Beds of this kind are not built for spontaneous motion. You climb, rather than lie, into them, often with the help of a footstool. You adjust yourself onto the straw-stuffed mattress, then wriggle beneath several heavy wool blankets and maybe even a fur throw. If you're lucky, the mice haven't found their way into the foot of the bed. Now, the masks come out. Yes, blur up. Both the nobleman and his wife wear them. His is stuffed more plainly, perhaps with just lavender and rosemary. Hers includes dried rose petals and chamomile, stitched into soft linen and perfumed lightly with rosewater. She ties hers with care, avoiding her fresh braid. He, with the lazy confidence of a man who has never once sewn anything. You, watching from your imaginary corner, see the flicker of candlelight beneath the drawn bed curtains. The noble coughs once. The lady exhales, long and slow. The servant, still hovering like a ghost near the door, whispers a good night and pulls the chamber door closed behind her. They are alone now, not just in the room, but in their thoughts. The lavender helps. The scent is grounding, familiar. It covers the smell of the chamber pot, tucked discreetly under a wooden stool. It hides the musty wool of the blankets. It comforts, in a world with precious few comforts. Outside their window, you can hear the street winding down. A drunkard mutters to himself in the alley. A cart creaks past, carrying some unknown bundle toward the edge of town. Even at night, the world is moving, but in here, all is still. It might surprise you to know that in households like this, sleep often came in two parts. The first sleep and the second sleep. People would nod off for a few hours, then wake in the middle of the night for a brief period of meditation, quiet conversation, or even light reading by firelight. Then, they would return to bed for the second sleep until morning. Historians still debate whether this segmented sleep was due to the absence of artificial light or the irregular rhythms of daily life. Tonight, however, your host is aiming for an unbroken slumber. The day has been long, court gossip exhausting, his back aches. The lavender does its work, and soon, the rhythmic breathing of two deeply asleep humans fills the chamber. And you, in your own bed, breathing the same floral fog, follow suit. You can almost feel the warmth of their hearth, the tight softness of their mask ribbons, the creak of the wooden bed frame as they shift. There's a curious intimacy in these old rituals, shared moments in darkness, punctuated by soft prayers and the scent of crushed herbs. Before you drift off completely, you might imagine yourself as the third sleeper in that great Bedtime scene, perhaps, but comforted, protected by the same soft mask, watched over by flickering candlelight, a maid's careful fingers, and the weight of centuries-old lavender dreams. The noble couple sleeps now, buried under layers of wool and habit, but the house around them doesn't sleep, not fully. In an Elizabethan household, nighttime was its own kind of shift change. As the masters settled into bed with lavender masks, a quiet undercurrent of motion stirred the corridors. You remain wrapped in your own sleep mask, lavender misting your breath with every exhale. But now you're gently slipping into the quieter world of servants, the unseen, custodians of sleep. The maid who tucked in the noble lady hasn't gone to bed yet. She lingers in the antechamber, folding linens and refilling water jugs. There are candles to snuff, fireplace coals to bank, nightshirts to air out for tomorrow. She moved soundlessly, her feet used to these creaky floors. Her own room, if she has one, is likely down a narrow servant's stair, barely wide enough to pass without turning sideways. Meanwhile, the scullery boy, perhaps 10 years old, is sent down to the kitchens to check that the fire is fully out. He carries a lantern, though it swings more wildly than it should. He's afraid of the dark, of the pantry shadows, of rats. With human eyes a nonsense tale, the cook tells him when he forgets to scrub pots properly. But he goes. It's his duty. Even at this hour, the night watchman hired for larger households might be patrolling the grounds, a cudgel in one hand, a horn in the other. His job is simple: stay awake, keep trouble away, and ensure no one's stealing the silver by moonlight. Lavender is not part of his world. He smells more of pipe smoke and damp wool, and he's long stopped believing he'll ever sleep peacefully again. Still, he sometimes carries a little sachet of rosemary in his pocket, a gift from a housemaid he once courted. He pretends he doesn't care, but he sniffs it on cold nights like this, just before the frost sets in. Then there are the nurses, wet nurses. If a baby's in the house, or older women tasked with tending the sick, they do not sleep deeply. They rest in half-dozes, one ear tuned for whimpers, coughs, or creaking doors. If they're lucky, they get to wear the leftover sleep masks from their mistresses, old and worn. The lavender faded but still faintly there. These servants keep the night afloat. They're the hidden gears of the sleeping household. You breathe in deeply. The lavender in your own mask is more vivid now, not because it's stronger, but because the story is quieter. You can smell it better when your thoughts slow down. If you were a servant in this house, your sleep would come hours later, and never uninterrupted. You'd sleep in twos, sometimes in threes, huddled under rough blankets, your dreams light and slippery. No embroidered pillows, no chamber pots with brass handles, just straw pallets and the hope that no one wakes you too soon. Sometimes servants would sneak little comforts into their own bedding, scraps of dried mint or hay-scented lavender picked from the manor garden, not as a luxury, but as a thread of calm pulled through the seams of long days. Historians still argue whether these nighttime rituals were born from practicality or from a deeper human desire for rhythm and softness. Perhaps both. After all, even in a world that demanded obedience and toil, people still sought small joys like the familiar scent of herbs, the creak of the same old step, the hum of sleep shared in silence. You imagine, now, slipping into the shoes of one of these servants. Maybe you're the maid, finally curling into her cot beneath the sloped attic ceiling. The walls smell of dust and old linen, your feet ache. But before sleep, you reach under your rough pillow and pull out a tiny cloth pouch. Lavender, dried weeks ago, folded in cheesecloth and tied with kitchen twine. You hold it to your nose. It's faint, but it's yours. You close your eyes. Downstairs, the nobleman shifts in his sleep. The fire dims. The house breathes. The lavender in your mask pulses with every breath. You're connected to them now, to the noblewoman dreaming beneath embroidered sheets, to the maid snoring softly in the eaves, to the night watchman patrolling the grounds with rosemary in his coat. All of you floating in your separate dreams, buoyed by herbal air. Maybe, tonight, no one wakes early, no pots boil over, no baby cries, just soft, uninterrupted stillness, rare prize in the Elizabethan night. And you, here, nestled in your imagined bed, surrounded by old wood, and laced with the smell of lavender, are part of it too. The house around you settles. The story's quiet. The breath of the building exhales for the final time. The last candle sputters into smoke. Sleep, steady now, deep, rooted like lavender in warm soil. You awaken, or rather, drift into a memory carried on scent. Lavender, once again, not the cultivated kind in orderly garden beds, but wild, curling. From the edges of stone paths and half-crumbled monastery walls, the Elizabethans didn't just love lavender for its fragrance. They trusted it, wove it into magic, medicine, and memory. You're not in the noble house now. You're walking, slowly, through a bustling herb market. The air is thick with dried bundles of thyme, sage, pennyroyal, and of course lavender. Women chatter, children dart between carts, and the herb sellers hawk their remedies in practiced sing-song voices. Sweet lavender, for a dreamless night, one cries. Bundle, oh sleep, 1 penny a pouch, calls another. You watch as a young mother leans down to examine the offerings. She selects a small sack of dried flowers, fingers brushing across the soft linen as she presses it to her nose. Her eyes close briefly. It's more than scent, it's hope in cloth. Back in the home, these bundles become more than simple sleep aids. They're tied to chair legs to ward off bad spirits, hung above infant cribs, tucked into girdles. Sometimes, they're sewn into sleep, masked, yes, the very same kind you're still wearing in this journey, nestled close to the skin to soothe, comfort, and, supposedly, protect. It wasn't just about falling asleep. Elizabethans believed lavender purified the air. Remember, this was an era before germ theory. People thought disease floated in miasma's bad air. Sweet smells, they believed, drove away the sickness. A perfumed mask wasn't just luxurious, it was protective gear. One fringe belief, whispered among midwives and herbwives, claimed that lavender could banish demons of the night. Night terrors, shadow folk, the kinds of things that crawl just outside the edge of candlelight. Some would boil the flowers into teas, others would burn lavender stems in bedrooms, letting the smoke curl into dark corners. Historians still argue whether these beliefs were sincere superstitions or simply tradition passed through generations. Some scholars say the ritual use of lavender was more about control, bringing structure to an unpredictable world. Others argue it was spiritual, a botanical bridge to something beyond the veil. You return to your noble household now, following the scent trail. The lady of the house is reading, her eyes squinting in the poor light. On the small oak table beside her sits a collection of little charms, a carved piece of coral for protection, a sprig of rosemary tied with red thread, and yes, a pouch of lavender sewn into delicate netting. This isn't for aesthetics. This is ritual. Before she sleeps, she opens the pouch and breathes deeply 3 times. Once for the body, once for the mind, once for the soul. There's a faint bell chime in the hallway. The herbalist has come. You follow her hand, older woman, with sharp eyes and fingers stained green from years of plant oils. She carries a basket of freshly dried herbs, her nose wrinkling at the smell of soot and human living. She doesn't knock. She's familiar here. Inside the lady's chamber, she kneels by the hearth, murmuring something under her breath. Half prescription. She removes the old sachets from the sleep mask, replacing them with new lavender blossoms warmed. By her apron, she sprinkles something, possibly mugwort or ground chamomile, on the base of the bed, then takes her leave. Her job is done. The night is protected. You notice something else. Beneath the mattress, sewn into the bedclothes, lies a tightly folded charmer parchment with an herb-stained thumbprint. The writing is faded, but it's there. Some believed writing the name of a specific saint or reciting a spell while stuffing a lavender sachet made the protection stronger. Others believed it worked better if you whispered a secret into the mask before sleeping. Lavender wasn't just about fragrance, it was about intention. A joke from the period claimed that a well-prepared sleep mask could chase off nightmares and nosy husbands. You grin at the thought, even as the lavender continues to pull your mind into a deeper state of calm. The noblewoman slips her mask on now, lying back onto embroidered pillows. Her eyes flutter closed. She is not just resting, she is trusting. You imagine, for a moment, what your own charm might be. What would you whisper into your sleep mask, just before dreaming? What scent would comfort you if you woke to thunder or aching bones? The world outside the manor is dark now. Foxes scream in the hedgerows. The moon is low and full, bathing the rooftops in cold silver light. But inside this room, inside this moment, all is well. The lavender is strong but gentle, softening your breath, clouding your thoughts in just the right way. You drift with it, you let it carry you. Somewhere in the back of your mind, you remember that even Shakespeare mentioned lavender. He called it hot lavender, mints, savory, marjoram, a list of things meant to warm the heart and soothe the soul. And as your thoughts begin to flutter like candle shadows, you understand why this plant, above all others, was trusted by the sleepless for so many centuries. You're still wrapped in the comforting haze of lavender. But now, as the moon drifts higher outside the manor's mullioned windows, something shifts. It's the sound of servants quietly preparing the house for night. You hear footsteps, soft, careful ones moving along wooden floors. A chambermaid adjusts a shutter, muttering about a draft. The scullery boy makes one last trip with a candle, shielding its flame from the wind. But most notably, you hear the rustle of fabric bedclothes, to be precise, not your own. These are stuffed with straw, feathers if you're lucky, and perhaps even warmed with a brick wrapped in cloth at the foot. The Elizabethans didn't just rely on lavender or sleep masks. They engineered comfort in a world that offered very little of it. Tonight, you follow a maid to a lower room, less decorated, plainer walls, no velvet bed hangings. This is where the lower gentry sleep, or perhaps a wealthier servant. And here, you see another form of bedtime preparation. Sleep mask here is simpler, linen, loosely stitched, but still, it smells of lavender and a hint of rosemary. This sleeper isn't just hoping for rest, they're hoping for a night without mice, without fleas, without shouting from upstairs or strange creaks from the roof. Remember, this is a time before central heating, before noise insulation, before even the idea of sleep as a sacred 8-hour block. Sleep was fragmented, interrupted, and often communal. You settle on a bench nearby, watching as the household layers itself into sleep, like a town slowly dimming its lights. A flickering rushlight here, a taper snuffed there, and all the while, the subtle, slow descent into stillness. Back then, people often experienced first sleep and second sleep, two distinct phases, separated by a few hours of quiet wakefulness. In the space between, one might pray, read, even write letters by candlelight. So, if you find yourself waking in the middle of the night, congratulations, you're historically accurate. Historians still debate the reasons behind this sleep pattern. Was it due to circadian rhythms adapting to natural light? Or was it more about the daily structure of Elizabethan lifelong days of labor that demanded segmented rest? The chamber you're in now smells of straw, soot, lavender, and, be honest, bit of unwashed humanity. Not everything is romantic here, but there's a certain intimacy in the discomfort. Everyone, no matter their station, wants a little softness at night, and that's where sleep rituals come in. You follow your gaze to a small wooden box beside the bed. Inside, carefully arranged, are the tools of nightly comfort: a wooden comb for smoothing the hair, a bit of beeswax for cracked lips, and of course a pouch of dried herbs. Not just lavender this time. There's valerian root, known even then for its calming properties, and lemon balm for gentle dreams. Another item catches your eye: a folded scrap of parchment with a pressed flower inside, likely a keepsake, perhaps from a child, or a lost love, or a whispered vow no one else heard. Elizabethans believed that what you took to bed influenced your dreams, not just physically, but emotionally. You weren't just closing your eyes, you were entering a space where memories mingled with superstition. A light joke passed among servants was that sleeping masks didn't just help with sleep, they also blocked out the judgmental glares of your neighbors, because privacy, that was a rare luxury. You move again now, climbing a narrow spiral stair, the stone cool beneath your feet. At the top, the master's chamber, larger, quieter. The air smells less of lavender and more of old wood and wax. He doesn't wear a sleep mask. This gentleman, he prefers a glass of warmed spiced wine and a page of Virgil before bed, but his wife, she still uses the mask, keeps it tucked beneath her pillow, and only slips it on once the candle is out. You watch her now. She moves with practiced grace, slipping between sheets that were shaken out and warmed moments ago. The lavender scent is faint, less overpowering than before, subtle. Now, like memory. She turns her face toward the window, her mask slipping on with the elegance of ritual. It's not just comfort, it's identity. A small, private rebellion against the day, against politics, against corsets and court and expectation. A final whisper in the dark. Let no dreams trouble me tonight. You hear it, soft and breathy, the kind of thing no one would admit to saying, and yet it echoes. Some claimed that saying a charm aloud, even under breath, gave the herbs in your mask greater strength, that sleep itself could be shaped by will. You settle near the hearth as the coals dim to orange. All around you, the household breathes in quiet rhythm, different rooms, different classes, but united, oddly enough, by lavender and sleep masks. You think again of the mask you wear, drifting alongside these memories. How much is protection? How much is placebo? Historians still wrestle with that. Some argue these rituals were more psychological than practical. Others say the herbs genuinely improved air quality and relaxation. But you don't need to decide. You just breathe in lavender and let go. The candlelight is dimmer now, and your breathing has slowed further, thick with the weight of tiredness. You drift deeper into the Elizabethan night, where the world beyond your sleep mask feels both distant and oddly alive. Outside the manor, the village slumbers under a blanket of stars, but inside, the echoes of daily life linger in subtle ways. The sounds of distant footsteps, a dog barking far off, the soft rustle of a night breeze slipping through chinks in the walls. These are the whispers of a time when people lived closer to nature's rhythms and to their own. Sleep masks like yours weren't just practical. They were part of a larger tapestry of bedtime rituals that embraced the senses, touch, scent, sound, all tuned to lull you into rest. The lavender in your mask is a silent singer, its aroma coaxing your nerves to quiet. But there were other players in the Elizabethan orchestra of sleep. For instance, the sounds of the night itself, crickets chirping, owls hooting. Even the creak of wooden beams were not considered disturbing. They were part of the natural chorus, a lullaby sung by the world itself. The idea of a quiet night, as we understand it today, was foreign. Instead, people expected sound and accepted it. Sometimes, people carried small bells or rattles to ward off spirits. These were kept close at hand, hidden beneath pillows or near bedsides, a curious juxtaposition to the soothing lavender. But it reflected the era's duality, sleep as both peaceful refuge and potential battleground. Historians still debate the extent to which Elizabethans feared the night. Some argue it was a time of vulnerability and superstition. Others suggest it was a cherished pause in the day's relentless pace. Imagine lying in your bed, the soft weight of the mask holding you gently. The scent of lavender mingles with the faint musk of beeswax candles and the dry smell of wood smoke. Your thoughts slow. The world contracts to this small, fragrant space between your ears and your chest. You think again about the care that went into making that mask, the flax grown in distant fields, the flowers harvested at dawn, the gentle hands sewing each stitch, every detail intended to guard your sleep. The masks weren't just for nobility. Common folk, too, prized them, though their versions might be rougher, less fragrant, but no less precious. Some were made of scraps of cloth, scented with wildflowers from nearby meadows. Others included bits of herbs like vervain or sweet woodruff, each believed to carry its own powers. You wonder about the people who wore these masks. What dreams did they have? Did the lavender lull them to visions of sun-dappled fields, or did worries from the day slip in despite the scent? One amusing note from the time was a belief that wearing too strong a scent could attract unwanted attention from mischievous fairies or nosy neighbors. So, people learned to balance their mask's fragrance carefully, enough to calm, but not enough to invite trouble. And the ribbons, those delicate ties behind the head, sometimes caused headaches if too tight. another charming reminder that even ancient sleep aids had their flaws. As you lie here, surrounded by the gentle sensory world of an Elizabethan bedroom, you feel the centuries fold around you. You are part of a long tradition of people who understood that sleep was precious and fragile, and that a little lavender tucked close to the skin could make all the difference. The night deepens, the world outside fades, and you are held, softly, by scent, memory, and the slow turning of history. The deep night settles into a gentle hush, and you find yourself slipping further into the comfort of lavender's embrace. Your eyelids grow heavier, the world narrowing to the soft scent pressed against your face. But even as you drift, the Elizabethan night continues its quiet work around you. Imagine now the household's nocturnal sounds, the faint creaking of timbers adjusting to the cold, the distant clatter of shutters closing against a rising wind, the occasional soft sigh of someone turning in their bed. It's a world alive, with subtle motion, yet inviting calm. The natural chill of the air is softened by thick tapestries and the warmth radiating from the hearth. The scent of burning wood mingles with your masks, lavender, creating a soothing olfactory duet. Elizabethans had a fascinating relationship with sleep aids. Beyond lavender masks, they used a variety of herbs and concoctions to ease restless nights. Some swore by the calming effects of valerian root, while others preferred the gentle touch of chamomile tea before bed. But none were as widely beloved as lavender, likely because it offered a perfect balance, comforting fragrance without overpowering, a subtle calm that didn't dull the senses completely. You might smile to know that the very idea of a sleep mask was somewhat revolutionary. Before this, people often slept in the dark or with a simple cloth over their eyes to block out candlelight or the early dawn. But the Elizabethan mask combined practicality with ritual. It was a tactile barrier against the world, a way to claim your own space amid the bustle of a crowded household. Historians still argue whether the masks were primarily medical tools, spiritual aids, or simply fashionable accessories. The truth probably lies somewhere in between. Now, imagine the masks, lavender slowly easing the humus, those mysterious bodily fluids thought to govern health and mood. If you were feeling melancholic or choleric, the scent might help balance your humors and ease your sleep. You think back to that strange phrase, cool the passions, used often in Elizabethan remedies. It meant calming the nervous system, lowering the heat of anxiety or anger, and promoting rest. Lavender's role in this was subtle but vital, and as you breathe, you might recall the occasional joke Elizabethans told about sleep masks, how a badly sewn one could give you mask face, a kind of early beauty myth warning against poor craftsmanship. You chuckle softly, imagining a sleepy noble waking with twisted ribbons and a bruised nose. Outside the room, the household sleeps in staggered shifts. The night watchman's rounds grow slower. The kitchen fires smolder low. The scullery boy dreams of freedom and ripe fruit, but you remain cocooned in your lavender mask, drifting on the edge between wakefulness and dreams. The scent thickens, a gentle fog wrapping around your mind. Your thoughts slow, floating like feathered seeds on a soft breeze. You are falling deeper now into rest, into history, into the quiet comfort of centuries-old sleep rituals. And as the night wears on, you find yourself cradled by the invisible threads that connect you to every dreamer who ever wore a lavender sleep mask before. You sink deeper into the comforting veil of night, held gently by the lavender's calming aroma drifting through your sleep mask. The soft cadence of your breathing matches the subtle rhythm of the Elizabethan household as it rests under the thick cover of darkness. Though the world is silent to your ears, if you listened closely, you'd hear the faint scratch of a quill. In a dimly lit chamber, where a scholar records notes about the plants and herbs that ease restless nights, they might be jotting down observations on lavender's soothing properties, some practical, others steeped in superstition. You imagine the scent drifting from a small linen bag tucked beneath a pillow, the dried flowers whispering secrets to the dreamer beneath. This tradition, passing down herbal sachets from mother to daughter, created a quiet legacy, a soothing thread through centuries. Remember that the Elizabethans had no concept of insomnia like we do today. Sleeplessness was often seen as a symptom of imbalance or spiritual unrest. Remedies were aimed at both body and soul. Lavender masks offered a rare convergence of both a physical barrier and a spiritual shield. In the dim glow of candlelight, families would share tales of dreams, some hopeful, some cautionary. These stories weren't just entertainment. They were warnings and guidance woven into the fabric of daily life. As you lie here, it's easy to forget that sleep masks weren't universally accepted. Some considered them unnecessary or even suspicious. There were whispers that too much reliance on herbs and charms might interfere with divine will. Historians still debate whether these attitudes were widespread or limited to certain social classes. But one thing is certain: those who embraced the lavender mask did so with conviction. You breathe in deeply, the scent now mingling with memories of rain-damp earth and old parchment. You imagine the gentle rustle of bed curtains, the weight of featherbeds beneath you, and the quiet contentment of a night well prepared. The Elizabethan mask was more than a sleep aid. It was a comfort in uncertain times. It was a promise that, despite the world's chaos, you could claim a small sanctuary of peace. And here you are now, wrapped in that tradition, carried by the scent of lavender, drifting toward your own dreams. Your eyelids grow heavier still. The room seems to expand and contract with your breathing. The mask feels like a soft whisper against your skin. Sleep is near. You welcome it. The quiet hum of night deepens, and you feel yourself slipping further into the tender fold of sleep, cradled by the soft lavender scent that has been your companion through this journey. Yet, the Elizabethan world still pulses quietly around you. Tonight, imagine the household's many layers: servants sleeping in cramped quarters, children nestled beneath thick blankets, elders resting with the aid of herbal infusions. Sleep masks, especially those scented with lavender, were cherished tokens of rare luxuries that bridged social divides. Even beyond the manor, lavender found its place in everyday life. Farmers harvested it in the early morning mist, gathering stalks for drying. Apothecaries ground the flowers into powders or distilled their oils for remedies. Midwives carried small bundles to soothe mothers and infants alike. Lavender was also woven into festivals and celebrations. On Midsummer's Eve, it was common to hang sprigs above doorways and windows, a fragrant barrier against ill fortune and restless spirits. Sleep masks, though private, carried echoes of these communal rituals, silent guardians of the night. You might find it curious that lavender was linked not only to sleep but also to love. Elizabethan poets often referenced it as a symbol of devotion and fidelity. A lavender-scented mask might have been a subtle message, a secret gift between lovers who understood its tender connotations. Historians still puzzle over how deeply such symbolism influenced daily practices. Was lavender's role in sleep purely medicinal, or did its presence carry the weight of cultural meaning? As you lie enveloped in the scent, you can almost feel the intertwining of these layers: the practical, the spiritual, the poetical, merging in your gentle breathing. A playful Elizabethan jest suggested that a man wearing his lavender mask to play long might be mistaken for a ghost, too pale and perfumed to be fully among the living. This light-hearted quip reminds us that even in times of ritual and superstition, humor found its way into nightly routines. The household quiets further. You imagine the slow ticking of a wooden clock, its pendulum swaying in the dark. The scent in your mask deepens, warm, familiar, like a whispered lullaby with every breath. You move closer to the gentle world of dreams. The Elizabethan night carries on soft, fragrant, and unhurried, and you, nestled in lavender's embrace, float peacefully toward dawn. The night deepens, thick with stillness and the subtle pulse of your slowing breath. Your lavender sleep mask feels like a tender promise against the dark, a fragrant shield from the worries of the day. You are adrift in the soft cocoon of Elizabethan slumber rituals, and as you drift, you begin to notice the faint sounds and sensations that shaped bedtime centuries ago. In grand houses, beds were often shared. Couples, children, even servants, sometimes found warmth together beneath heavy blankets. This closeness wasn't just about comfort, it was practical and chilly. Drafty rooms with no central heating. Imagine the rustle of shifting bodies, the soft sighs of sleep, and the occasional whispered prayer in the dark. Sleep masks like yours helped block out the flickering candlelight that never quite disappeared in these spaces. The thin curtains around beds did little to hold warmth or silence, so the mask was not just a fragrant comfort, but a tool for creating private darkness, a personal sanctuary. But even with these aids, nights were frequently interrupted. Chamber pots needed emptying. Night cries from infants echoed. Roosters, oddly, sometimes crowed before dawn. The idea of unbroken sleep was elusive. Elizabethans managed this with an acceptance that feels foreign today. Sleep was naturally segmented. After the first sleep, many would rise for a brief hour or two to pray, reflect, or even socialize quietly. This wakeful time was seen as normal, even beneficial. Lavender's soothing scent played a role here, helping ease the transition between these sleep phases. Some even believed it helped prevent nightmares during those vulnerable waking hours. Historians still debate how widespread this segmented sleep was. Was it common only among the wealthy, or did it permeate all levels of society? The answer remains elusive. But the rituals of calming the night with lavender hint at a shared human need to soothe restless minds. You might smile to know that Elizabethan doctors sometimes prescribed lavender masks to the insomniac or the melancholy, believing that scent alone could cool the passions and restore balance. And as you breathe, you think back to that peculiar phrase, the balancing of humors, and how deeply it shaped daily life, including sleep. Your mask is soft now. The lavender faded to a gentle whisper. The world around you breathes slowly, quietly. You feel held, safe, carried by centuries of shared sleep and scent. The candle flickers once more, then dies. Sleep claims you fully. You remain nestled in the softness of night. The lingering lavender sent a gentle caress on your skin. The Elizabethan world you've inhabited these past hours slowly fades, but its traces remain in the quiet pulse of your breath and the warmth behind your eyelids. Sleep masks like yours were more than just aromatic comfort. They were talismans, woven with intention and care. Made from delicate linen, stuffed with dried lavender and other herbs, they embodied the hope that rest could be coaxed, even in a restless world. Imagine the hands that stitched your masks, perhaps those of a devoted mother, a patient herbalist, or a servant trying to bring a touch of calm to their own harsh nights. Each stitch was a small act of love and protection. Across Elizabethan England, lavender held its place not only in beds but also in bathhouses, gardens, and even cooking. It was a scent that threaded through life's routines, marking moments of peace amid the bustle. You might smile at the old tales whispered in taverns that lavender could ward off the evil eye or soften the edges of grief. Such stories mingled with the practical, the medical, and the spiritual, forming a rich tapestry that surrounded sleep rituals. Historians still debate whether the symbolic power of lavender outweighed its medicinal uses, or vice versa. Perhaps it's impossible to separate them. The scent carried both physical and emotional weight, soothing bodies and minds alike. As you rest now, you carry this legacy with you. The gentle aroma clings to your skin, a reminder of centuries-old care, of quiet hands and whispered prayers. You breathe deeply, the lavender drawing you into a softer, slower rhythm. Time dilates, the boundaries between past and present blur, and as your thoughts dim, replaced by the sweet haze of sleep, you find yourself cradled by an invisible thread, line connecting you to every dreamer who ever wore a lavender sleep mask. A world away, beneath the same stars, they breathe alongside you, wrapped in scent and shadow. And here, at last, you slip fully into rest. The final hours of night stretch softly before you, a slow, gentle unwinding as the lavender scent in your mask settles deeply into your senses. The Elizabethan world you've wandered through fades, like morning mist, leaving behind only the softest impressions of its rhythms and rituals. You feel the coolness of the linen against your skin, the subtle weight of dried flowers cradling your face. Each breath draws in calmness, each exhale releases tension. The world is quiet here, inside this fragrant sanctuary. Sleep masks like these were gifts of grace in an era that knew little luxury. They were the quiet armor of rest, shielding you not just from light, but from the chaos of a day filled with hard labor, uncertainty, and constant noise. You think of the countless dreamers before you, noblewomen, servants, children, each one clutching their own sachets, tucking herbs close, whispering hopes into the dark. The lavender was their shared secret, a balm for tired bodies and restless minds. It crossed social lines, binding the household together in a subtle embrace. Historians still marvel at how such a simple plant became so central to nightly rituals. Its power was both real and imagined, a fragrant thread weaving together medicine, superstition, and comfort. And now, as dawn begins to touch the horizon, you find yourself on the cusp of waking, carried gently from sleep's embrace. The lavender scent lingers still, a soft reminder that rest is a gift and that the rituals we create to claim it are as old as time. Your eyelids flutter, you stretch softly. The room around you begins to brighten, But before you rise, take a moment to feel gratitude for this slow journey into history, for the quiet power of scent, and for the centuries of sleepers who dreamed alongside you. The lavender mask slips from your face. The scent fades, but its calm remains. Rest well, friend. Now, as the night slowly folds into dawn, feel your body soften even more. Each breath becomes lighter, slower, like petals drifting on a gentle breeze. The lavender scent, now faint but comforting, lingers softly in the air around you. Let your thoughts drift gently, untethered and free. There's no rush here, only the quiet promise of rest and renewal. Imagine yourself lying in a soft bed, wrapped in linen and warmth. As the world outside wakes up slowly, respectfully, without hurry, the cares of the day fall away, replaced by a gentle stillness that fills every corner of your mind. The distant call of morning birds feels like a lullaby, coaxing you to stay just a little longer in this tender space between sleep and wakefulness. You are safe, you are calm, you are cradled by centuries of shared rest and the soft scent of lavender. Now, as your breathing deepens and your body fully relaxes, you drift farther into peaceful sleep. Sweet dreams. Hey guys, tonight we return to the candlelit corridors and lavender-scented linens of Elizabethan England. You're standing in the doorway of a dim bedchamber, wood floors cool underfoot, shadows curling in the corners like old cats. A heavy velvet curtain hangs around the bed like a stage set for sleep, and somewhere in the distance, the soft hush of the Thames seeps through the shutters. You can smell the fire's last embers, a mix of smoke, wax, and the faintest breath of herbs. Tucked into the bed, everything is still, except for the occasional squeak of floorboards as someone stirs in the next room. But don't be fooled. For all its romantic glow, bedtime in the Elizabethan era was a ritual, a carefully structured dance of comfort, superstition, and surprisingly strategic design. And you, lucky time traveler, are about to spend the night among these embroidered sheets and half-forgotten customs. Of course, you probably won't survive this without catching something, but let's not ruin the fantasy. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And if you're cozy under the covers, let me know where you're watching from and what time it is there. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You reach for the embroidered curtain, pull it back slowly, and step into the room where sleep happens, like theater, ritualized, scented, half magical. The mattress is stuffed with wool, but you'll notice how high it sits, nearly waist height. That's not just for luxury, it's partly to keep away the rats, the cold, and the creeping damp that always threatens the lower floorboards. The bed frame itself is carved oak, often passed down through generations, creaking with family history, as much as it does with the weight of nightly sleep. On one end, a chamber pot waits behind a wooden panel. No one likes to discuss it, but it's there because the outhouse is outside, and no one wants to sprint through a frostbitten garden. At midnight, the windows are covered in oiled cloth or shuttered wood, not glass. Only the wealthiest had glazed panes, and even then, it was mostly for show. By candlelight, the room takes on a golden hue, the shadows thick and velvet rich. Everything is designed to trap warmth, to keep out the wind, and maybe soothe the mind into surrender. Look closely at the bed linens. They're rarely white. Soft browns, muddled blues, and dusty rose colors are common, often hand-dyed with plant tinctures. The pillowcases, if there are any, are stuffed with goose down, though poorer families might make do with straw and rags. And somewhere beneath it all, under the mattress, a few pressed herbs might be hidden to keep the evil spirits at bay, or the fleas. You might hear the crackle of the rush mat underfoot. These mats, replaced seasonally, were sprinkled with sweet-smelling herbs, lavender, marjoram, or even dried fennel to counteract the less than delightful aromas of unwashed feet and chamber pots. They weren't just decorative, they were medieval air fresheners, though you'd still need a strong stomach. And now, as you sit on the bed's edge, perhaps pulling off one of those absurdly stiff shoes, imagine what it felt like to wind down. In this world, no glowing screens, no electric hums, just the sound of settling timber, the odd owl hoot, and the sleepy mumble of prayers spoken half aloud. Many Elizabethans slept with religious tokens, tiny crosses, rosaries, even shreds of blessed cloth. You'd tuck them under your pillow like insurance. And when you finally slid beneath the covers, there was no tossing and turning in isolation. Entire families, especially among the lower classes, often shared beds. Privacy wasn't just rare, it was almost non-existent. Imagine sharing your mattress with a cousin, 2 siblings, and a dog. Romantic? Not really. But it was practical, warm, and communal. Wealthier folks had more options. Feather beds, embroidered blankets, silk sleeping hoosiers. Those existed. The bedchamber became a reflection of status. Visitors might even be shown to your room to admire the bed, much like someone today might show off a new car. Historians still argue whether some of these rich sleep rituals were more about comfort or performance. There's something surprisingly soothing in imagining all this. A world where bedtime was ceremony, where the simple act of slipping between sheets held meaning, intention, and just a bit of magic. And so you lie back now, staring up at the wooden canopy above. The fire has dwindled to coals. Your body begins to loosen. Your breath slows. Outside, the world is still and waiting. Sleep is near. The air is heavy now, warmed by fire and perfumed by time. You're nestled deep in the scratchy softness of linen sheets, your limbs slowly sinking into the contours of the bed like bread rising in a wooden bowl. But in Elizabethan England, this was only the beginning. You didn't just fall asleep. You had to prepare for it, like a knight readying for battle, or, perhaps more accurately, like a deeply paranoid relative packing for a very long, very spiritual journey. Elizabethans were big believers in sleep posture. That's right, there were rules. You weren't supposed to just flop down like a starfish. You were encouraged to sleep on your right side for most of the night. This wasn't just tradition, it was tied to ancient medical theories, particularly the idea of balancing your humors. The right side supposedly kept your stomach contents from sloshing upward and ruining your insides. Charming, right? You turn gently to the right. The bed creaks in protest. Somewhere, beneath all that wool and padding, a few sprigs of dried rosemary crunch faintly. Someone must have tucked them there, not for decoration, but to ward off bad dreams and fleas. You stare at the ceiling, wooden beams stained with decades of candle smoke, and above those, sometimes, bundles of herbs were hung from rafters, not just for scent, but for spiritual protection. Lavender, chamomile, bay leaves, the very air you breathe was part of the nighttime ritual. Then there's the sleep mask. You're already wearing it, by the way. A velvet thing, slightly too snug, with a faint musky smell of age and lavender oil. It's tied with ribbon behind your head, and yes, it's more than just a fashion statement. The Elizabethans believed that sense influenced your state of mind. Certain herbs could calm the brain, slow your heartbeat, and encourage spiritual visions during dreams. The sleep mask, filled with dried lavender buds, wasn't just to block light. It was a form of passive aromatherapy. And because there were no essential oil diffusers and no white noise apps, this humble mask was your ticket to restand, maybe a divine dream or two. Now, while you breathe in that soft, sleepy lavender, consider what it took to maintain these masks. They had to be refilled, reshaped, and repaired. A good sleep mask might last a season if you were careful. And if you were rich, you had a servant who specialized in nightwear robes, caps, masks, and maybe even a foot warmer lined with salt. And speaking of foot warmers, look down. See that ceramic jar near the base of the bed? That's not for tea. It's a bed warmer, often filled with hot coals or sand. You'd wrap it in cloth and place it at your feet before crawling in. If you weren't careful, of course, it might scorch your sheets or your toes or set the whole bed on fire. But hey, warmth is warmth, still cold. You could always invite more bodies under the covers. Remember, personal space didn't exist, yet it was normal to share a bed with relatives, travelers, or apprentices. Stranger sharing was often part of an inn setup. So if your bedmate snores, well, tough luck. At least, it's authentic. But perhaps the strangest part of this whole nighttime ritual, they didn't sleep all night. Historians still argue whether segmented sleep was a conscious habit or a side effect of natural light rhythms. But here's what we do know. Elizabethans often experienced 2 distinct sleep phases. First sleep would begin shortly after nightfall and last for about 4 hours. Then came an hour or 2 of watch, a period of quiet wakefulness where you might pray, think, or even visit the neighbors. Then came second sleep, which carried you to dawn. Imagine that now you awaken at midnight. Not to panic, but because that's normal. The fire's gone cold. The lavender mask feels damp against your cheek. You peel it back, sit up slightly, and listen. Somewhere in the house, a kettle is being stirred, a candle is relit, someone else is up. To dot you whisper a short prayer, maybe mumble about a dream, or, you're right, that's not a joke. Some people kept dream journals, in ink, with feather pens, by candlelight. Others just padded quietly across the floor to check on children, or the pantry, or the state of the moon, a brief interlude of wakefulness. Then, sometime later, you pull the covers back over your body, nestle deeper into the mattress, retie your sleep mask, and drift into second sleep. And that was normal. No melatonin gummies, no scrolling on your phone until your eyes bleed. Just you, the ticking of the clock, or, more often, the drip of water or creak of wood, and the weight of another hour spent on this planet. Some would even say that second sleep brought the real dreams, the deeper ones, the ones touched by angels or haunted by the day's unfinished business. Lavender would carry you there, or so they hoped. You breathe in once more. You're not sure if you're in first sleep or second. You're not sure it matters, because in this bed, in this time, sleep was not a sprint. It was a procession, a performance, a scent-soaked, creaking ritual of surrender. A faint glow pushes at the edges of the shuttered window, and the fire has curled into its embers. You're not quite sure if you're still in the first sleep, or have begun the descent into the second. But no matter. In Elizabethan England, night was a long and layered thing, filled with rituals, interruptions, and strange sounds in the dark. You shift beneath the covers, a draft tickles the edges of your nightshirt, and the wooden bed frame creaks in a way that makes you wonder whether it's the wood or your joints. The mattress below you's stuffed with hay, or perhaps straw crackles faintly, and somewhere in the distance, beyond these four walls, a dog barks, then silence. But even now, you're not alone. This bed you're curled into, it's not just a private place of rest. In the Elizabethan world, sleep was rarely solitary, unless you were wealthy enough to command your own chamber, or enough to sleep in a monk's cell. You'd likely share your sleeping space and often your very bed. Servants, siblings, travelers, apprentices, even newlyweds could find themselves bunking with others. This wasn't just about space, it was about warmth, about security, and often about keeping costs down. If you've ever tried to sleep with someone who snores like an ox cart stuck in mud, you're in good company. Elizabethans didn't just endure it, they expected it. You feel the press of another body on the mattress, breathing, shifting, maybe muttering something in a dream. You turn your head slightly and see the pale oval of a nightcap, pulled low over a sleeping brow. No big deal, just another soul sharing the same nightly voyage through half-lit slumber. Don't remember the lavender sleep mask. It wasn't just for blocking light or calming the mind. In such communal settings, scents were survival. Imagine sleeping in a room full of unwashed feet, fire, smoke, damp wool, and someone's last meal of pickled herring. No thank you. Lavender wasn't just pleasant, it was a weapon. But even that couldn't mask everything. Elizabethan nights were noisy, not with traffic or sirens, but with a constant chorus of domestic life. Mice scratching behind walls, dogs growling in dreams, wind squeezing through ill-fitted shutters, floorboards above you groaning under the weight of someone visiting the chamber pot, a chorus of distant snores rising like soft thunder. And let's talk about chamber pots for a moment, shall we? There was no stumbling to a sleek porcelain bathroom with LED lighting and scented soap. No, you did your business in a bowl with a handle, right there in your room. And if you were lucky, it wasn't already full. Emptying it. That was a morning problem. You simply replaced the lid and returned to bed, trying not to dwell on the contents. Some households kept a separate nightstool, a wooden box with a hole and a chamber pot beneath. Very regal. Others didn't bother with such formalities. Some just went outside, in the dark, into the cold. Or, if you were a child, maybe into the hearth, ashes, desperate times. You get the idea. You pull the covers tighter around you. The air is still cool, edged with the Thames of old wood smoke. Your sleep mask has slipped, and you adjust it carefully. The ribbon slightly damp from your hair, still smells of lavender, still grounding. Now, you might be wondering, what did they wear to bed? Well, you're currently draped in nothing fancy, made of linen. Usually undyed men and women alike wore similar garments, simple shifts that reached the knees or lower. Sometimes, people even slept naked, especially in warmer seasons, though that wasn't always socially acceptable. In fact, One clerical ordinance advised against nudity in sleep, citing both modesty and moral decay. Fun. But the average person wasn't worried about sinning in their sleep. They were worried about lice, bedbugs, fleas, and other delightful hitchhikers were common bedtime companions, hence all the lavender, and rosemary, and wormwood. Some folks even slept with bundles of rue beneath their pillows, believed to keep away not only pests, but evil spirits. Sleep hygiene, 1590s edition. And what about dreams? Dreams weren't dismissed as nonsense. They were taken seriously. Entire books were written on interpreting dreams, many rooted in biblical or classical traditions. Dreaming of teeth falling out, portent of death. Dreaming of climbing stairs, social ascent. Dreaming of lavender fields, likely prophetic, or just evidence that your mask was a bit too fresh. But dreams were also deeply personal. Many people prayed before bed, not just for protection but for guidance through their dreams. You might ask for a vision, or a sign, or simply hope not to dream at all, because sometimes dreams were believed to be visitations from ancestors, from spirits, from the divine. Historians still argue whether Elizabethans truly believed in nightly prophecy, or whether it was a convenient way to process anxiety and guilt. Either way, your dreams weren't just yours. They were your community's. You might discuss them at breakfast, record them in your prayer book, or consult a village wise woman for clarity. Tonight, though your dreams are soft, drifting, full of half-seen corridors and muffled voices, you hear the creak of another bed across the hall, the shuffle of straw on stone. You are one soul among many in a house that breathes through the dark. The second sleep approaches, or is this still the first? Time has loosened its grip. Lavender curls through your nose, earthy and sweet. Your nightshirt is tangled at your ankles. The chamber pot is thankfully not in immediate use. Still, the bed holds you. This ancient, wheezing, beloved cradle of rest. The Elizabethans may not have had foam mattresses or blackout curtains, but they had rituals, herbs, and a belief that sleep mattered, that it healed not just the body, but the soul. And with that, your body slips further into warmth, into quiet, into the long layered night of another century. You wake briefly, not fully, just enough to shift your weight and exhale. The fire is nearly out now, only the barest orange heartbeat still pulsing in the coals. Outside, the wind nudges the shutters, and a distant owl calls once, then disappears into silence. This is the moment in the night when time seems to stop, the breath between two worlds, and in this fragile hour, a peculiar Elizabethan ritual often took place, the midnight snack. Not the heaping plate of leftovers we might imagine today, but a small, intentional bite, a morsel, a comfort. Some would rise briefly to sip a cup of warmed ale, spiced with cloves or ginger. Others nibbled on dried fruit, or cheese, or sugared almonds kept in a pouch beside the bed. If you were lucky enough to be in a house with servants, a quiet knock might signal a tray of warm passetta thick custardy drink made from milk curdled with ale or wine, sweetened with honey and nutmeg. No one ate much. The point wasn't nourishment, but soothing, a ritual to anchor the mind and prepare it for the second descent into dreams, a sleepy chew in candlelight, a moment of stillness. As you sit up and sip your warm drinklets, imagine it's gently steaming. You notice the fire has faded entirely now. The room is truly dark, save for the dim glow of the candle stub near your bedside. The lavender scent from your sleep mask has mellowed, folded into the linen and the air. Perhaps this interlude is when you reach for a book, not a novel. For those hadn't quite arrived yet in their modern form, but a prayer book, a psalter, a collection of proverbs. Elizabethans often read or recited scripture during the night, hoping to protect their dreams or absolve their thoughts, or they meditated on the saints, or the stars. In some homes, astrological charts were consulted to determine the best time for sleep. If Mars was in retrograde or Saturn in opposition, you might be advised to delay bedtime altogether, or to burn rosemary instead of lavender, or to sleep facing east. Superstition, perhaps, but also a sign of how deeply they believed that sleep was a cosmic act, a conversation between your body and the heavens. And now, you lie back again, your belly warm, your breath soft. The candle flickers, struggles, then complete darkness. The second sleep begins. The stillness after the candle dies is complete. You feel your body settle deeper, your limbs like cooled wax. But you are not alone in the dark. No one in Elizabethan England truly slept in solitude, not in the way you might imagine today. The bed you're lying on, it's less a soft rectangle of rest and more of a wooden fortress. And tonight, you've slipped beneath its heavy canopy, wrapped in thick woolen blankets, your head resting on a bolster so firm it feels like a rolled-up rug. This isn't just a bed, it's a chamber of defense against drafts, rodents, spirits, and even peeping servants. Elizabethan beds were built like strongholds. The great beds of the gentry and nobility, often made of oak or walnut, were enormous, standing waist-high with intricately carved posts and heavy, embroidered drapes, called testers. These weren't decorative, no, they were drawn at night, to keep out the cold, to muffle sound, and sometimes, when privacy was needed to hide what happened inside, it wasn't uncommon for the whole household to sleep in the same room, servants on pallets near the fire, children in trundle beds, pulled from under yours. If you were very wealthy, you might enjoy a separate chamber, but even then, your bedchamber doubled as your dressing room, your sick room, and your gossip parlor. Sometimes, whole families shared a single mattress, and not always lying flat. Elizabeth often slept half-sitting, propped by bolsters, to aid digestion and, oddly enough, to avoid the posture of death. Lying flat was reserved for corpses. You, in your bed now, try to raise your torso just slightly, just in case someone's watching. And the tester curtains, they weren't only for heat. In a world still caught between Catholicism and Protestantism, between astrology and alchemy, privacy was protection. It was said that evil spirits traveled on cold air, slipping in through keyholes and under doors. If you closed your bed curtains tightly enough, you might block the bad dreams, those delivered by the mare, the nocturnal spirit who gives us the word nightmare. Your hand brushes the embroidered edge of the canopy, stiff threads of gold and blue. Maybe your household stitched these drapes by candlelight months ago. Maybe someone in your family was born in this bed. Maybe someone died here. Historians still argue whether the Elizabethan obsession with thick enclosed beds was more about status or safety. Likely both. A bed was one of the most expensive items in the home, bequeathed in wills, moved from house to house during times of plague, guarded with superstitions. People didn't just sleep in these beds. They negotiated power, intimacy, and even politics under those drapes. And yet, inside your wooden cave, it's easy to forget all that. The air inside the curtains is warmer. Still, it smells of wool and lavender and something, slightly burnt perhaps from the candle stub, now long out. You shift your feet beneath the blankets. Something scratches, not a rat, don't worry. Likely the straw ticking in your mattress. Most Elizabethans didn't sleep on feathers. Despite the fantasy, that luxury was for nobles. You're on a sack stuffed with straw or wool or maybe even rushes, and the bedsheets, not soft Egyptian cotton, I'm afraid. Coarse linen, maybe even rougher if laundry was delayed, and it often was. Which brings us to the unfortunate truth. Elizabethan beds weren't exactly clean. Bedbugs thrived, so did lice, and if you were lucky enough to have furs or embroidered quilts, they were also homes for moths. That lavender in your sleep mask, it wasn't just for calm. It was a defense strategy, a natural repellent. People also used cedar chips, dried rosemary, or pennyroyal to line their bed drains, all in the desperate hope that the biting things would stay away for just one night. But tonight, let's pretend you're safe. The curtain is drawn. The bugs are gone. The fire outside your tester canopy has faded to a quiet heap of ash. No one is watching. Not the spirits, not the servants, not the cold. Just you, and the soft, dark space between two dreams. Time passes strangely in the second sleep. It is deeper, more detached from the world, as though your soul has gone walking without your body. But there are things that might stir you even now, within this black velvet night. A creak of the floorboards, the shifting weight of a slumbering house, or the gentle splash of a chamber pot being used across the room. Because yes, there were no toilets in Elizabethan bedrooms. If you were among the wealthy, you might have a ceramic Jordan pot near the bed, your own private latrine. The less fortunate used a wooden bucket, or, in shared quarters, simply stepped outside if they dared. In cold weather or late-night hours, these moments were brief and hardly comfortable. The floor might be freezing, your path lit by a single taper, flickering like a haunted will-o'-the-wisp. Some households employed night stools, essentially wooden boxes with lids, concealing a pot within. Even monarchs weren't exempt from such arrangements. Queen Elizabeth I herself had an appointed groom of the stool, a position both intimate and prestigious. One's duty was to ensure the Queen's comfort during these private moments, but also to advise her, for who else could be so trusted? As you drift in and out of consciousness, you wonder what role privacy and shame played in this nightly ritual. Elizabethans were far more accustomed to the presence of others. During bodily functions, life was communal, and modesty, though valued, was shaped differently. Still, you're thankful for your curtain, drawn tight. No eyes meet yours. You are veiled by linen and shadow. You lie still again, grateful the night is long, but not too long soon. Morning will begin its quiet rehearsal. The air will grow thinner, lighter. The birds will begin to murmur. Yet now, a new sound reaches you, not the call of an animal, but a bell. It's faint, distant, but unmistakable. The tolling of the matron's bell from the local church tower. It calls not to action, but to awareness, a marking of time in a world that rarely had clocks. The rhythm of life, even in darkness, dictated by sacred ritual. If you were devout, and many were, you might wake just enough to whisper a prayer or make the sign of the cross in the dark. Some believed it was safest to do so during the liminal hours, when the veil between worlds thinned, and the devil was more likely to whisper. And so, you recite a line from memory, perhaps something from the Book of Common Prayer. Lighten our darkness, we beseech thee, O Lord. You barely finish the verse before slipping under again. Outside, the bell fades. The world grows quiet once more, and sleep, that second sacred sleep, holds you gently once again. When next you stir, it's not to light or sound, but to scent, faint and floral, sharp and earthy. It's lavender again, but transformed by the night. It has sunk into the fabric, softened into the folds of your sleep mask, mixed now with the must of the sheets and the faint ash of the fire. It is both soothing and a little odd. In Elizabethan times, this was entirely the point. Lavender wasn't chosen for its beauty alone. It was believed to have medicinal and spiritual potency. It calmed the nerves, cleared the humors, and, most importantly, kept away bad air. Because back then, people believed disease floated through the night in invisible clouds called miasmas, poisonous vapors that crept into homes through windows, cracks, and even your breath. So you didn't just tuck lavender in your pillow. You hung it in bunches from the rafters. You boiled it into your washwater. You tucked it into your undergarments. You even mixed it into your ink and in your sleep mask. It wasn't just for comfort. It was defense against nightmares, against melancholy, against death itself. Scholars still debate whether the Elizabethans truly feared sleep or simply respected its mysteries too much to take it lightly. For you, though, in this soft bed, the fear is distant, but the belief strangely clings. You think of those who came before you, ladies in heavy gowns kneeling beside beds, gentlemen whispering Latin prayers, servants pressing hot bricks into flannel to warm feet beneath the covers. There is something comforting in the ritual. Even now, you shift slightly, pressing your face deeper into the scent-soaked mask. The warmth of your breath causes the lavender to bloom a little more. Somewhere in your dream, a garden appears. Gravel paths, a hedge maze, a fountain dripping slowly, and endless purple blooms, lavender fields stretching under a grey English sky. There, in that dream garden, you are barefoot. The path is soft, not gravel but moss. The lavender brushes your fingertips. Bees hum, but don't sting. You follow the curve of the hedge without needing to know where it leads. And, as you wander, some distant corner of your brain remembers a strange detail, that lavender wasn't always beloved. In fact, during certain periods, it was thought to stir passions too much, to incite impure thoughts. Some churches even discouraged its use. Imagine that. Something so calming, too dangerous, but you don't feel danger. Only the slow lull of forgotten footsteps, crushed blossoms, and dusk that never ends. The air cools. A new breeze stirs your window curtain. You tug the coverlet closer. The scent deepens. Sleep holds you. Lavender keeps you. The night deepens, thick and slow like honey dripping from a comb. Outside, the moon makes soft shapes against the leaded glass of your window, shapes that dance and blur as the candlelight flickers behind the heavy curtains. You breathe in the familiar gentle scent of lavender still tucked close to your face, a small comfort against the chill that seeps through the wooden walls. As you nestle deeper into your bed, you realize that in Elizabethan times, the idea of sleep itself was quite different from our modern understanding. They didn't think of sleep as one long, continuous block, but rather as a series of phases, with its own purpose and significance. Your body, they believed, was part of a cosmic rhythm. Sleep wasn't merely for rest, but was a sacred time for cleansing the mind and body, restoring the balance of the four humours: blood, phlegm, black bile, and yellow bile, that governed health and temperament. Sometimes, people used sleep to communicate with the divine or even the dead. Nighttime was the hour when spirits were said to roam freely, and some believed that dreams could reveal hidden truths or future events. The mask on your face, filled with lavender, was a barrier between you and these mysterious realms, a gentle shield against malevolent forces. Historians still argue whether these beliefs stemmed more from superstition or practical observations of the mind's workings during sleep. Regardless, for you now, in this quiet dark, it's easy to imagine that sleep is a bridge between worlds, not just a physical state, but a spiritual journey. As the second sleep carries you further from waking, your mind drifts to the bed linens that surround you, woven by skilled hands, often with coarse flax fibers spun into linen. They weren't the silky soft sheets of today, but rough and sturdy, designed to endure frequent washing, which was done by hand and was a serious chore. You imagine the scents mingling there, the earthiness of hay mattresses, the faint trace of lavender and rosemary, the occasional musk of damp wool. These smells formed the night's atmosphere, subtle yet persistent. And speaking of mattresses, you remember that most people didn't sleep on feathers, as you might expect. Feather beds were a luxury reserved for the very wealthy. You lie on a sack filled with straw or rushes, sometimes replaced seasonally to keep the bed fresh, sometimes left to become a refuge for insects. But it still cradles you, a humble nest in the dark. Your thoughts float to the household noises you can faintly hear, the soft snoring of a servant tucked into a corner, the distant bark of a dog, the drip of water from a leaky roof. These sounds are part of the nocturnal landscape, a subtle soundtrack to your drifting consciousness. You adjust your lavender mask slightly, feeling the softness of the buds pressed against your skin. It's comforting, a gentle anchor in a world of shadows, and as you sink deeper into sleep's embrace, you wonder how many others, centuries ago, wore similar masks, how many found peace in lavender's quiet spell, how many felt the same pull between the real and the dream. You breathe slowly, deeply, the scent of lavender filling your senses as the night carries you onward, past the veil of waking, into the mysteries of sleep itself. The dawn still feels far away as your breath slows and your thoughts dissolve into that hazy space between dreaming and waking. Yet, in the Elizabethan era, this fragile moment, the cusp between the second sleep and the approaching day, held particular significance. You might imagine yourself lying still, swathed in your heavy linen nightshirt, the weight of wool blankets pressing softly on your chest. The bed curtains remain drawn, muffling the early morning sounds of household stirrings and the faintest light beginning to touch the edges of the room. But what of the morning rituals? Elizabethans often rose not with the sun itself, but at the call of church bells or the clatter of servants preparing the household. In wealthier homes, your chambermaid or valet would wake you gently, perhaps with a soft cloth dampened in rosewater or lavender to freshen your face. The practice of washing in the morning was still evolving, and many simply rubbed themselves with scented cloths rather than full baths. You reach out to adjust your lavender sleep mask, now slightly damp from the warmth of your skin, and feel a sense of gratitude for this small luxury. The calming scent has accompanied you through the night's segmented sleep, a constant companion against the cold drafts and restless dreams. But what about the broader significance of these sleep habits? Historians still debate how much the segmented sleep pattern shaped daily life. Did it encourage nighttime creativity and conversation, or did it simply reflect the constraints of candlelight and the cold? You consider that for many, the night hours were filled with quiet work, prayer, or reflection moments where the world slowed, and people could engage with their thoughts in a way impossible by day. In some households, those waking between sleeps might visit the chamber pot or step outside briefly. Others used this time for intimacy, a fact that surprises some modern listeners, but fits with the slower rhythms of Elizabethan life. These hours were not necessarily lonely or unsettling, but rather a natural part of the daily cycle. You think about how different your own sleep feels compared to this ancient rhythm, how the steady hum of electricity and central heating has erased much of the night's mystery and ritual. Yet, as you lie here, breathing softly beneath your lavender mask, you find a strange kinship with those long-ago sleepers who trusted in the night's layers to carry them safely through. The room here remains quiet, the only sounds the distant crowing of a rooster and the gentle rustling of leaves outside your window. Your eyelids grow heavy again, and you welcome the final descent into the morning's rest. The day begins to stir beyond your window. Though here in your bed, the world feels far away, soft and muted under layers of wool and linen. The pale light filters gently through your drawn curtains, casting patterns on the wooden floorboards and the rough-hewn walls of your chamber. You breathe slowly, your lavender sleep mask still resting lightly over your eyes. Its scent now a familiar lullaby, wrapping around you like a whispered promise. It's a scent that has traveled through centuries, touching countless sleepers who sought comfort and calm in its gentle embrace. In Elizabethan England, mornings were a gradual awakening. Unlike the abrupt alarms we know today, there was time to transition between the shadows of sleep and the demands of the waking world. Servants might bring a basin of water and a cloth scented with herbs to gently rouse you. Your hands might feel the chill of the cold water, your breath catching in the sudden freshness. As you sit up, you notice the weight of the night's blankets pressing down, reluctant to be left behind. The wool feels heavy but familiar, the linen rough beneath your fingertips. You glance at your nightshirt, its simple linen threads still slightly rumpled from your restless sleep. The chamber itself smells faintly of wood smoke and lavender, the residual memory of the night's rituals. Somewhere nearby, a fire is stoked to warm the household, and you hear the low murmur of voices beginning their daily tasks. You think back to how the Elizabethans valued these small comforts amid their harsher realities. Sleep was a refuge, yes, but also a moment of ritual and respect, a time to honor the body's needs and the mysteries of the mind. Some scholars argue that the ritual of wearing lavender-filled masks and using herbs was as much about psychological comfort as physical protection. The mind, they suggest, responds to scent with memories and moods, and lavender became a gentle guardian of dreams and rest. Your thoughts drift to the curious blend of superstition and early science that characterized Elizabethan health practices. Bloodletting, herbal remedies, and prayers were all part of a holistic approach to well-being, where sleep was both a medicine and a mystery. Now, as you prepare to rise, you feel a lingering calm. The night's fragmented rest has held you tenderly, wrapped in scents and shadows, a soft passage through darkness into light. You ease yourself from the bed, the mattress creaking faintly beneath you, and step lightly onto the wooden floor. Outside, the household is fully awake, ready to meet the day with all its challenges and quiet wonders. And you carry with you the faintest trace of lavender, a whisper of sleep's ancient secret. You leave the sanctuary of your bed and step into the early morning light filtering through the tall mullioned windows. The Elizabethan chamber you occupy is more than just a place to sleep. It is a hub of daily life, filled with objects and rituals that remind you of the era's unique blend of practicality and symbolism. On the wooden dresser nearby, a small bowl of water infused with herbs awaits your washing ritual. The scent of rosemary and sage mingles with the fading lavender from your mask, creating a complex bouquet that gently rouses your senses. Bathing, as you know, was a luxury. Elizabethans bathed infrequently, relying instead on these fragrant washes to cleanse both body and spirit. You remember that clean linen was a prized possession. Sheets were washed with great care, often outdoors, and dried in the sun, a process that could take days. The wear on fabric was inevitable, but a well-kept bed was a sign of order and respectability. As you dress in your day clothes, perhaps a woolen doublet or a linen gown, the day's pace begins to take shape. Elizabethan mornings were often filled with prayer, reading, and planning. The blurred line between sacred and secular shaped every moment, including the way people approached their health and rest. It's fascinating to consider how your sleep mask, filled with lavender, fits into this worldview. It wasn't just about comfort, but about aligning yourself with natural and spiritual forces believed to influence well-being. The mask served as a talisman, a soft barrier between you and the uncertainties of the night. Historians still discuss the extent to which these practices were rooted in tradition versus early medical understanding. Some argue that Elizabethan sleep rituals were a precursor to modern sleep hygiene, emphasizing routine and environment. Others suggest they were primarily cultural expressions of a society deeply connected to symbolism and ritual. Whatever the case, the gentle scent of lavender lingers on your skin and in the folds of your clothing, a subtle reminder of the night's journey. It's a fragrant thread connecting you to a long line of sleepers who, despite their world's challenges, sought peace and rest beneath the stars. As you step away from the bedchamber into the bustle of the day, you carry this connection quietly with you, a whisper of calm amid the demands of the waking world. The morning sun climbs higher now, casting warm light across the wooden beams of your chamber and illuminating dust motes that dance lazily in the air. The world beyond your window is waking fully, merchants setting up stalls, children beginning their play, and the faint clang of smiths at work echoing through the streets. Back inside, the day unfolds with rituals that are both practical and deeply tied to Elizabethan beliefs about health and balance. You might sit by a small table where bowls of herbs, dried flowers, and spices are arranged, reminders of the medicinal role plants played in daily life. Lavender, of course, remains prominent. It was used not only for sleep but also for treating headaches, calming fevers, and even as a natural disinfectant. You might dip a cloth in lavender water to soothe a sore throat, or carry a sachet to ward off the plague, a frightening spectre of the time that shaped so much of daily existence. As you move through your morning, you recall that Elizabethans believed in the importance of the four humors, and that maintaining their balance was key to health. Sleep was one of many tools used to regulate these forces within the body. You might pause to consider the gentle warmth of sunlight on your skin, a natural antidote to the damp, cold indoors that so many suffered from. It was believed that exposure to fresh air and sun was essential to keeping the humors in harmony. While modern science has largely moved beyond these ideas, the emphasis on routine, environment, and gentle care remains surprisingly relevant. It's a reminder that, despite the centuries and changing knowledge, people have long sought ways to nurture body and mind. You take a deep breath, savoring the mingling scents of lavender, fresh linen, and the faint earthiness of the thatched roof. These sensory details, simple as they are, connect you to a world both foreign and familiar, and as the day calls you forward, you carry the calm of the night with you, a soft, scented thread woven through the fabric of your daily life. As the day rolls onward, you find yourself reflecting on the social aspects of sleep and rest in Elizabethan England. Unlike the solitary, private rituals many of us experience today, sleep in this period was often communal and deeply intertwined with daily routines. In wealthier households, bedrooms might be shared by family members, servants, or even occasional guests. Privacy was a luxury, and beds were more than places to rest. They were stages for conversation, storytelling, and sometimes quiet negotiation of household affairs. Your lavender sleep mask, a small but significant item, symbolized more than just personal comfort. It was part of a larger cultural tapestry, woven with symbolism, practicality, and social meaning. You imagine a scene, a young woman preparing for bed, her hands carefully sewing lavender buds into a silk pouch. She exchanges a knowing glance with a maidservant, both aware of the mask's dual role as protector and fashion accessory. Historians still debate how widespread such practices were beyond the elite, but evidence suggests that lavender and similar herbs were valued across classes for their calming effects and pleasant scent. There's also an interesting paradox here. While lavender was cherished for its soothing properties, some Elizabethans believed too much fragrance could stimulate the senses and disrupt rest. This delicate balance between comfort and caution reflects the nuanced approach they took to health and sleep. You lean back into your imagined bed, the scent of lavender drifting around you like a gentle mist. The layers of history and human experience wrap around your thoughts, a comforting reminder that even in centuries past, people sought peace and rest with the same quiet yearning you feel now. And as your breathing slows, you realize that the simple lavender mask is more than an object. It's a bridge across time, linking you to countless sleepers who, like you, found solace in its soft embrace. The afternoon light fades gently now, slipping through the latticed windows and casting long shadows across your chamber. The quiet hum of the household has softened, the bustle replaced by a more contemplative stillness. As the day winds down, you think about the rhythms that shaped Elizabethan life, not only the segmented sleep, but also the daily cycles of work, prayer, and rest. The body was seen as a delicate instrument, requiring careful tuning through diet, exercise, and, crucially, sleep. Lavender's presence throughout these rituals is a testament to its enduring role. From the filling of sleep masks to the scenting of bed linens and clothing, it was a constant companion, offering calm in a world often marked by unpredictability and hardship. You consider the scientific debates of today, whether the benefits of lavender are primarily psychological or if there are measurable physiological effects. Modern studies suggest lavender oil can reduce anxiety and improve sleep quality, a surprising confirmation of Elizabethan wisdom. As you adjust your imagined sleep mask, you feel a soft warmth spreading through your body, a gentle invitation to begin the descent into evening rest once more. The scent seems to deepen, wrapping around you like a comforting shawl. In these final waking moments, you reflect on the intertwined nature of ritual and belief. For Elizabethans, sleep was never purely physical. It was an act rich with meaning, a gateway to health, protection, and spiritual renewal. The gentle scent of lavender lingers as your thoughts grow quiet. The night beckons, and you prepare to return once again to the soft folds of rest, carried by centuries of tradition and care. The quiet dark settles once again around you, a soft, enveloping cloak that blurs the edges of the world. Your lavender-filled sleep mask rests gently over your eyes, its calming fragrance a familiar friend in the stillness. As you lie there, you feel the gentle rhythm of your breathing slow, each inhale and exhale a tender echo of the countless sleepers who have come before you. Elizabethans who, despite their hardships and fears, sought peace beneath the same night sky. Sleep in their time was layered and complex, a dance between superstition, medicine, ritual, and simple human need. The segmented nights, the carefully prepared beds, the aromatic herbs, all part of a delicate balance designed to soothe the body and mind. Historians still debate many aspects of these practices, but what remains clear is the care Elizabethans took in preparing for rest. Their rituals may seem foreign now, but they reveal a universal truth, that sleep is sacred, a vital space where the soul and body reconnect. As you drift deeper, carried by the scent of lavender and the warmth of the bed, you let the worries of the day fade. The night is long, and the promise of dreams is near. Remember the soft glow of candlelight, the quiet hush of the household, and the gentle protection of your sleep mask. And now, let the final waves of sleep wash over you, soothing and slow. Now, as the night winds down and your breath grows steady and calm, imagine the lavender field stretching endlessly beneath a twilight sky. The scent is faint but persistent, a soft thread weaving through the air, grounding you in tranquility. Let your mind float gently on that scent, carried away from the busy thoughts of the day, into a space where time slows and peace deepens. You are safe here, wrapped in the quiet embrace of centuries-old rituals that honored rest and renewal. Feel the warmth of the blankets, the softness of the pillow, and the soothing calm of the night. Let every breath carry you further into restful sleep. Sleep well, dear listener. The night holds you gently, and the lavender will guard your dreams.